Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
What does it actually mean to be truly global to the extent we can, local, national, and international simultaneously, east, west, north, south, but from a place of actual growth and empathy? And this is where, again, this questions of consciousness come in. The questions of cultivating empathy, cultivating compassion, cultivating awareness, the complete antithesis of social media modes. Long-term thinking, compassion, seeing complexity, comfort with oneself, solitude, the opposite of instant gratification, the attempt to constantly humanize and not dehumanize your fellow humans. These are all completely countervailing forces to the market technologic that subsumes all of us today.
We lost someone, Michael Brooks. We lost one of the brightest, one of the most sincere, committed, empathetic, compassionate brothers I've ever known. Brilliant, downright brilliant, like the type of brilliance that I aspire to. Just naturally. Just because it was a Tuesday, he just let her rip with some of the most fascinating information. Like, not just like, there's a difference in brilliances. Demonstrated right there. Right? There's a difference in our brilliance, not just mine and his, but just his and everyone else's. Like, he had a well of knowledge that was so vast and so deep, and information and dates and the names and countries and this coup that happened because of this person who did this in 1945, and just the complexity and the nuances of almost any situation, particularly situations in the global South and situations in South America. Like, Michael Brooks was the brightest among us. He was also a friend. He also helped me when I was first starting out 5 years ago. I think within a year of me launching my show, he invited me on to the Majority Report. And quite honestly, a lot of you listening now, from everything that we've been talking about on Twitter, just remembering Michael, so many of you found me because of Michael. And so we lost a champion. We lost a friend. And we're going to always continue to fight for the same things that he fought for. He fought for, me and Mike, the last time we text was in April, late April, early May. And we were going back and forth, joking about how he scored the interview with Cornel West before I did. And it was no real competition. It was just kind of, camaraderie and friendly competition. And I was just so excited about the interview because it was so amazing. Because Michael liked to swim in a sea of nuance in the same manner that I enjoy, like just getting to the core of an issue, no matter how many layers of BS you have to cut through, and no matter how many layers of bad faith you have to weed through and just rip apart at all of the preconceived notions, just rip them apart to get to the core, the essence of an issue. That's what Michael was really good at. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed the conversations that we had whenever we were on the same show, whenever he came to my show, whenever I went to his show. And that's a level of brilliance that will forever be missed. I don't think anyone can replace. No, I'm confident that no one can, because in addition to his brilliance, he actually had a sense of humor that was hilarious. I mean, the brother can make you. Did you all know his middle name was Jamal? Michael Jamal Brooks, the blackest middle name I've ever seen a white person have ever. And we used to laugh about that, but it just made so much sense, man. The brother was from another world. And his time with us is now over. But his legacy, his words, his thoughts, I believe are going to be even stronger now. In fact, we can do our part to ensure that his legacy is stronger, that his words resonate even more, because what he said was legendary. What he analyzed, what he commented on, the commentary, the thoughts, they were legendary. They were accurate, and they were necessary. It's not about venerating a friend just for the sake of venerating him, but venerating him because that's what he deserved, because the thoughts that he offered to society were simply the best. Simply. I'm going to talk more about Michael before the show is over, because he was my friend. And I know other people knew him way better than I knew him for longer than I knew him. But the time that I did know him, I knew him to be charitable. I knew him to be empathetic. I knew him to be brilliant. I knew him to be compassionate and committed to the cause of liberation of all people, which is why I have no problem actually just taking as much time as I need to discuss him, because what he fought for was 1-to-1 what I fight for, what we all should fight for, the liberation of all people, the elimination of hunger and poverty, because we simply can. There literally is no reason for us to have the hunger and the poverty that exists on this planet. Those are decisions that we make, and that's what he was fighting for. The liberation of people across the globe, not just American liberation, but the liberation of all the people who have been the recipients of American imperialism. That's what he fought for. That's what we all should fight for. He was respected. He was respected. And he's going to be missed.
Empire is. I came across a speech fragment from Martin Luther King Jr. recently, which I played on my show. And I don't know where or the title of the speech, but I thought it was so important because we've put a lot of work, and we still have to put work into reminding everybody that the man was on the left. He wasn't a guy who came out once a year and said everybody should treat each other nicely. He was a serious... But the other thing that I loved about this speech, which was he talked about the fallacy that certain Christians misunderstood love as a ceding of power. And then Nietzsche came along and rejected Christian morality because he thought it was denying someone's vitality, the will to power in a healthy sense. And he said, love without power is sentimental and anemic, and power without love is abusive and corrosive. I'm paraphrasing. And that was when I saw it, I thought, well, here, okay, we know the left-wing Dr. King. Well, here's the Machiavellian Dr. King, and I love it. I want the left to have Machiavelli so that we can have the strategy, the ruthlessness, the clarity to actually win these battles and be ruthless with institutions. And then I want us to learn how to be really kind to each other.
"2020 is a constant struggle between feeling despair and unfiltered rage. Despair because of all the sadness that's around us, all of the people that we're losing, the friends that we're losing, and rage at the fact that it didn't have to be this way. We're not 100% sure the whole story on Michael. His sister was on the Majority Report today, and she discussed that it was a blood clot in his throat, but they aren't sure if it's related to COVID-19. And so we don't know. We don't know. So I can't put him in the category of people who possibly could have still been here if not for the recklessness of this American government. I don't know that, but that's the mystery that so many families are dealing with right now. And the fact is, we're losing a lot of people, and America is still playing a level of games that drives me to a fury. The level of pettiness and fatuousness that they that all of this is wrapped in. There's sorrow at everyone's doorsteps, and all we can do is honestly hope and pray and wish and do our very best to make sure that it doesn't come to our immediate family. But it's already hit so many people's immediate families. It's already hit so many of our friends. So many people are being lost in this moment, and this government is playing games with us. So it's a constant battle. 2020 is a constant battle between feeling outright despair because our friends are gone, our heroes are dead, and our enemies are in power. But then I realized how useless despair is, how counterproductive it is. It's understandable to feel that way, but if anything, those who are gone would want, if anything, my friend Michael Brooks would want, anything my friend Rodney Allen would want, if anything, they would want us to continue to fight. I mean, not even just continue to fight, but to fight even harder. To fight even harder on behalf of people, of hurting people, people who are hurting, people who are desperate, people who don't have as much as we have. As little as some of us have, there's still people who have even less. And that's when you switch. We have to switch from despair. We cannot be brought down and encumbered with despair, completely overtaken by despair. We absolutely must channel it into rage. Rage against this American machine that is doing nothing for the people. In fact, doing the very things that will cause more grief and cause more sorrow. We have to fight. In whatever capacity that you can fight. Not everyone can do. Not everyone can do the same thing, and that's actually a good thing. None of us can do what Michael Brooks did. None of us can do what we can only do what we can do. And that's enough. I'm so thoroughly pleased to see how many people are standing up in Portland. How many people of different races are standing up in Portland. For years, it was black people standing on the front line fighting on behalf of black lives. And now we see a sea of white people chanting at the top of their lungs, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And that crowd, they are literally engaging in something in a fashion that the rest of us cannot do. They are protesting. They are protesting and using their privilege. Because while they are getting gassed by police, they are not going to get the same exact treatment that black people would get. And so they put their white bodies on the line in front of the crowd to ensure that if anything happens, it happens to them first. I mean, they are fighting in the best way that they know how, and we need it. We need them. They need us. We need you. We all need each other in this fight to do all of the things that we are capable of doing, even if we're not capable of doing the same thing. Even if the only thing that you could do is participate via social media, we need you. Because we cannot be overcome with despair. We absolutely must continue to fight on behalf of all the people we are losing right now, on behalf of all the people who are still living in impoverished conditions, all the people who are still food insecure, all of the people. I mean, this is literally what we're fighting. This is what we're fighting for. There's no way that they can sugarcoat this. There's no way that they can delude you into thinking. They can lie. But the truth of the matter of what we're fighting for is we are fighting for the liberation of all people. We're fighting against poverty anywhere on the face of this planet. We're fighting against hunger anywhere on the face of this planet. We are fighting against economic exploitation anywhere on the face of this planet. We are fighting the good fight. We are fighting the good fight, and I don't care how powerful our enemies are. I do not care how entrenched this power structure is. The cause of justice is on our side, and so we will not be overcome with despair, despite the fact that our friends are dying, despite the fact that our heroes are dead and our enemies are in power. And despite all that, we still have truth and justice on our side. And so I like our odds. I am fascinated by what's happening in Portland. I think it's a critical confluence of forces that requires our analysis and for us to pull it together. I don't Today's episode is going to be probably different for the rest of the episode. I make no apologies about that, but what's going on in Portland, I think is the best place to anchor the sorrow that I feel today, as well as the hopefulness that I have for tomorrow. In Portland, we do see a lot of white people, soccer moms, wine moms, people who have never protested before. We saw Chris David, the Navy veteran, who was assaulted by police officers, 53 by federal officers, 53 years old, had never been to a protest before. But once he saw the federal authorities snatching people off the streets without any due process, he went out there himself to investigate, and he got abused. He got his arm broken. You've seen that viral video. But that was his first protest. What's fascinating about this moment is the fact that they are all gathering and protesting on behalf of Black lives. This is a direct extension of what started in Minneapolis with the brutal murder of George Floyd. Here's what's fascinating about it, and I think this is where it becomes critical, is that you have on one side, you have a bunch of white people who generally are probably all liberals, who generally would never find themselves protesting on the streets, directly confronting the police state in whatever form it manifests. In this current manifestation in Portland, it is the federal police. And so people who normally would not find themselves in a direct confrontation with police on anything, and even much less on behalf of Black lives, but because of the level of injustice that has risen up in their, senses and their sensibilities, they just couldn't stand by. And so now they're putting their white bodies on the line on behalf of Black lives. Simultaneously, in Portland, you have Black, quote unquote, leaders who are being rolled out to try to satiate the masses, to try to quell the uprising. I do have audio and video of two particular leaders there in the city. One is a Black pastor, one is the Black president of the police union there. And I kind of don't want to play their voices. I almost would rather just describe it to you. But hear it for yourself. I had to listen to it, so you listen to it yourself.
After another night of violence that turned into a riot in North Portland, Black community leaders Sunday spoke directly to those involved in the violence and asked for a pause.
If you want to make change, if you're serious about change, then I'm begging you, as a citizen of this city for the last 32 years, to ask you to put down your need for violence and meet us. Have a moratorium and meet us so that we can talk and find out how we can come together.
Pastor Matt Hennessy said the violence is not helping bring the change that Black leaders want in Portland. Protesters Saturday night broke into the office of the police union and set it on fire. A frustrated union president said it must stop.
Our community has had enough. Our business owners have had enough. Officers have had enough, and Portland has had enough.
Daryl Turner said the violence has no connection to social change.
This is no longer about George Floyd. This is no longer about racial equity or social justice. This is no longer about reform or the evolution of policing. This is about violence, rioting, destruction, chaos, anarchy.
He urged everyone in the city to demand action.
Portland, it is time to stand up.
Yeah. Okay, so I let you hear it for yourself. Those are two Black men. One's a Black pastor, one's a Black police officer, and they are using the language and their position in terms of their identity to try to quell the uprising that's being headed up in Portland by a bunch of white people putting their lives on the line for Black lives. That is a collision of unforeseen narratives that really screams about the significance of this moment. I went over it in great detail yesterday, but allow me to just a minute here to parse it just a little bit differently than I did yesterday. You have black people who are beneficiaries of this system. And those people, and even very directly, the police union president that you just saw in that clip, or you just heard in that clip, they are directly beneficiaries of the police state. There are black politicians and black leaders, quote unquote leaders. I don't know who the hell they're leading, except maybe his one congregation, Pastor Hennessy. That's a name for you, right? But in their positions, their notoriety, their support, their living, their livelihood comes as a result of the system as it is. And so when they're talking about doing something on behalf of the black community, they're not talking about doing something on behalf of the black community that is continuously crushed down by this system. They're talking about doing something on behalf of the black community that are beneficiaries of this system. Two different communities. And this is where it brilliantly falls apart and breaks down to where class and race are inextricably linked. And we've seen how both of them have been weaponized against a unified movement against the power structure in this country. This is what I mean. We have seen, expressly so since 2016, the weaponization of identity politics, putting these two men up there as if they are spokespeople for black people in general. But when black people in general are being brutalized by the Portland police, how can you expect us to look at the president of the police association there in Portland as somebody who's speaking on behalf of the black people who are brutalized by the police? The same is true across this country. You may be black, but you are not a representative of the people that are broken by this system. You are an agent of this state. You are an agent of the police state. And so we've seen it time again. We've seen it in the media circles, right? We've seen it in mainstream media where black people are put up to speak on behalf of a system that most black people are left out of. And we're particularly left out of it, yes, because of race, but economically, we are tremendously left out of the system. You know, put up a black person and automatically they are like the next coming of Martin Luther King. And because they're black and they can get behind a microphone or say a couple of things, then they are the leaders that we should listen to. Absolutely the hell not. Because in this case, the irony of it is the folks that we should be listening to happen to be white soccer moms who otherwise would never be out there protesting head on, face to face with the police officers, but they're doing it because of black lives. And underneath all of it, as I expounded on yesterday, underneath all of it is the fact that you cannot fight for black lives without fighting this economic system that was built on exploiting black lives. The movement is inherently anti-racist and anti-capitalist. It is that because they are inextricably linked. You cannot fight racism in this country without fighting against capitalism in its exploitive fashion. You cannot fight against capitalism unless you're willing to fight against racism. It's just they are inextricably linked and they always have been in this country. But yet you have some so-called progressives, leftists who are doing everything they can in this moment, a handful of them who are doing everything in this moment to try to make sure that this is not viewed as a populist movement, as a movement that could represent the solidarity of the classes. They want this to be nothing more than a race-based movement. That's because they have made their entire existence has been around class reductionism. Their entire existence has been about class and class only, and we can make race secondary or tertiary. Similarly, you have black folks, black establishment, black, so-called black leaders who are doing everything that they can to make sure that there's no class solidarity around this movement because their claim to fame has been race reductionism. This only about race and nothing else. Don't ever move over into class because they're doing just fine. Their class structure, their class position is just fine. They are beneficiaries of this police state. So we could talk about race, but we can't ever do anything in earnest about race because if we ever really did something in earnest about racism in this country, you can't do it without talking about the classism in this country. And the irony of what's happening in Portland is that you have some radical, so actually they weren't radical, but you have some liberal moms and dads being radicalized in real time because their fight for Black lives is bringing them into direct confrontation with the police state. Now, let me give you this caveat here. Let me tell you what's going to happen, because this cannot be permitted to continue. The feds are going to back down. The feds are going to back down, because if this continues to escalate, there would be a solidarity between class and race like this country has never seen. Because as those white moms and dads are out there confronting the police, and questions arise in their mind about why the police are cracking down on them so vitriolically, so vehemently, the connection is directly linked to the fact that they have taken on the entire power structure of the Western world. They have taken on head on. They're not just fighting against Donald Trump. They're not just fighting against the police state. They're fighting against the people who are beneficiaries of the police state. They are fighting against people who are profiting off of the police state. They are fighting against an entrenched system that has been exploiting people throughout the existence of this country. And I think the shortcoming in this moment is that this connection is not being made. The linkage between all of this is not being made. What's happening instead is that you have people who normally talk about class and revolution, people who normally talk about the proletariat rising up, not comfortable with the form and fashion of this uprising. The fact that this rests clearly on the intersection of class and race. And you've got some Black folks who have been benefiting from this exact system, whether it be through their churches, whether it be through their positions as police officers or in their positions as politicians. They have been beneficiaries of this system, and they have benefited because they have been the race translator. They have been the spokespeople about race. And so everything about race is fine to talk about so long as you never talk about the class component. The bottom line is we got to get all these people out of the way. The people who would distract from the conversation about race and class, working in solidarity to tear down a system that has been exploiting us all, they have got to go. And anyone who is downplaying the significance of this uprising that has been consistent since Minneapolis and has now had a new flashpoint in Portland, then they are not a friend of justice. They are not a friend of liberation. They are trying to protect their own entrenched power. You can interpret that and apply it to whoever it applies to. You can bring names to me and we can confirm if I'm talking about them or not. But I want to make the general statement. Anyone who is downplaying or undermining the fight that is happening in Portland right now, they are not on your side. I don't care how Black they are, and I don't care how so-called progressive they are.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Shabazz Ahmed. Thank you for becoming a patron. Matthew Sitan, thank you for becoming a patron. Steve, thank you for becoming a patron. Jacob Messman, thank you for becoming a patron. Perry Howard, thank you for becoming a patron. Everybody just bop, y'all. Very special welcome to Steve Slouch. Thank you for becoming a patron. Aaron Noble, thank you for becoming a patron. And Lindsay Williams, thank you for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut, unfiltered, unedited interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether the powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I want to read a message from one of my patrons, and you'll understand why when I read it. Zach B sent me this message. He said, "Hi, Ben. In light of the passing of Michael Brooks, a man who provided so much insight, humor, and light as a voice in my ears throughout the week, I just wanted to send a note to the people who keep me educated, grounded, and connected during these times. I didn't get a chance to send this note to Michael. Ben, your show means a lot to me. I'm a part-time farmer, part-time marketer. In the mornings when I do my farm work, I listen to your show, usually the previous days. Farming is a calling and spiritual to me. In many ways, your show is the sermon to my spiritual work. Thank you so much for all you do. Solidarity, Zach. Zach, I really appreciate that, man. I really do. I know I can tell you this. Although you didn't get a chance to send this note to Michael, I know from my relationship to the people who listen to this show, and especially the people who support this show, that we know and we feel the love and we feel the support and we feel the appreciation. I want you guys to understand that the fact that you listen to me is an honor to me. It is a privilege for you to listen to. No, that didn't come out right. Let me rephrase it. It is my privilege to have you listening to my voice. And so the fact that people on an everyday basis download this podcast and listen, that is my honor. That is my privilege. The fact that some of you even go as far as to spending your hard-earned money to support this show, that is even greater of an honor. I never take that for granted, and I know Michael didn't. I know Michael well enough to know that he loved every single person who supported him, every person who listened to him, and that he was honored to be able to be heard. Cats like Michael and myself and Sam and everyone else who does this work, we're literally honored that you would listen to us and that you find what we have to say so compelling that you download our stuff every day or every other day or whatever, once a week, however often you listen, and that you would be a supporter. So I just say that to say that even though you didn't get a chance to send that note to Michael, I 100% know Michael knew. And that's it. That's the end of the show for today. Patrons, no patron episode today. I just kind of want to spend the rest of the day talking with everyone who remembers Michael, if you would allow me that time. Everyone else, I will see everyone tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.